Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 4th of May, 2025. The sun is still shining, even though it's 6 o'clock in the evening. And I've caught the sun this weekend, to say the least. Now, today, we're going to be talking about what do you use to support your plants? What do you use as your tomato canes, your pea sticks, your bean canes, and things like that? Before we get into that, and you find out what I've been doing this weekend as well, let's see if anybody is out there. Adrian is there saying hello to Richard and all. Good evening to you. We've got Turbo Stream saying good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Nathan, Allotted Chef. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. Hope you are well. Good evening to you. Scott from Seed to Table Plot 13, aka Chef Scott. Good evening, all. Hope everyone is having a lovely bank holiday. I keep forgetting it's a bank holiday, to be honest with you. Graham is there. Good evening, everyone. Hope you've had a great week. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson. Evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Hope you've had a great week and not got too sunburnt. Remember the cream and hat, indeed. Anna Jones, good evening, Garners. Good evening to you. Digwell. Yes, Asabari Nakamaino Manasukana Bokada. Good evening, my fellow vegetable growers in Japanese. I tried and failed, is all I can say there. One day, you're going to do a language that I actually know. It's going to be one of the most random language, and I'm going to pronounce it correctly. Kate is there. Good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Hargrave Gas. Evening all. Hope you've had a great week. Looking forward to this week's chat. Rebecca, good evening. Good evening to you. And Chili Kate is, hi, everyone. Happy Sunday evening. Good to you. Factor tar on my head, talking about the sun. Now, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. I actually caught the sun yesterday a bit. I'm a little bit red. Nothing too serious on my arms and my face. Nothing too serious. I went to Gardener's World Spring Fair yesterday and had another great day down in Bewley. I went with Amanda. I went with Roxy. Normally I go on the Friday, but because I don't work weekends anymore, I can go on the Saturday. And I've got to say, I had a really, really fantastic time. You hear more about it on the podcast tomorrow, of course. But I had a really good day down at Bewley. The show was pretty much the same as it has been over the last couple of years. It's expanded a bit, but it's still, for me, one of the best shows just to start this season off and get some bargains and buy and see what's available and get inspired. More importantly, get inspired. Now, there is a reason I bring up Bewley, and not just because of the sunburn, but because one of the subjects the subject that we're talking about tonight is plant supports. And yes, at Bewley, at Gardener's World Spring Fair, I did find some plant supports that I actually bought. These are metal posts, metal bars, metal, I can't think what they're called, but they're shaped to be plant supports, and they were pretty cheap, so I bought quite a few of them, and they got a rustic look to them, which I quite like. Now, these are going to hold back things like our peonies because they're growing like mad, and it's not long before they start flopping over. Also, our tomatoes and things like that, they're just going to act as a bit of a way to keep them in check. Swig of coffee coming right up. But for me, it's more that I think they're going to look the part. They're going to look better. In the past, I've used bamboo canes a lot. My grandfather actually used to have a patch at the bottom of his garden where he grew bamboo for that very reason. The trouble is bamboo does get very rampant, and it did start taking over all the places, even though it was in a cement bed. There was meant to be no way it could escape. It did. After many, 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 many years, we're talking 60 years, the bamboo did eventually escape, but it was still a way of getting things. The reason I don't like bamboo, in the past, bamboo used to be of a half decent quality, used to last. The stuff I find that is sold now isn't as good, in my opinion. It just seems very flimsy. I don't like the idea that it's transported halfway around the world. It used to be fine when it was, well, it was never fine transporting it halfway around the world. But I'm not a fan of using it. It does grow locally. There are places we can go and get bamboo from locally should we need. But for me, the one that I use a lot of now is hazel sticks. Down on the allotment, I have a hazel tree growing down there, which I often use to pick up well, I coppice it about once a year, pollard it, and I use the sticks to use as bean canes and things like that. So 3 things: metal posts, bamboo canes, hazel sticks. What do you use? Let's start that conversation off. What do you use? Now, Stuart says, I use canes for peas and runners. Also, I use string from a central pole just so it's more natural, and then I can cut it down and pot it in the compost bin after use. Actually, funny enough, I use jute string a lot in my greenhouse. I forgot to mention this. For my tomatoes and my cucumbers, I use jute string, a sort of natural twine, and I just get the tomatoes to find their way around that, coil around that string and make their way up. It works very, very well. And in fact, I think it was you guys last year that mentioned that you could buy jute netting on Amazon, and I bought myself some of that, and I've put that into place this week for my peas to climb up. Digwell says his gallows for runners. I forgot to grab a picture of those. Did we do it last week though? Because there's some Digwell has made some fantastic bean climbing frame. Looks like gallows that people used to hang each other off. But it looks absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, looks solid, looks like it's built to last. Chili Cat says, I'm so gutted I missed Bewley, but I did enjoy my cousin's wedding in Cornwall. You know what? Bewley will be there next year. Be a show again next year. Your cousin's wedding won't be. You gotta take what you can when you can. Jenny says, I use canes or prunings. I also use raspberry canes that have dried out. I have planted hazel this year for sticks. I've never thought about using raspberry canes, but that could work, couldn't it? That could very much work. Evening, Richard and all, says Nicola. Evening, Nicola. What do you use for you're growing your plants up, plant supports? Digwell says, I brought some hazel from Western Burt Arboretum for my beans one year. Half of them only lasted 1 season, the other half 3 years. I will admit, my hazel sticks, got to season them correctly. They can, some of mine are starting to snap a bit too easy. They are starting to deteriorate. But at the end of the day, they're grown on my allotment. There's no traveling involved. They're right there, and I can replenish them every year with new stock. And that is exactly what we're trying to do, replenish them each year with new hazel sticks. I think hazel is great, but it can be expensive to buy, which is why I planted a tree. Some people use willow. Now, I couldn't use willow in good conscience. Willow does have a habit of sticking it in the ground after cutting a branch off. Stick that branch in the ground, and it can regrow. Not my favorite thing to use, but it can be used nonetheless. Stuart says, I do use metal poles for my flowers. I find they look invisible after a few months, I think that's meant to say. Yeah. I fancied something that looks a little bit different. As I said, bean towers and things like that, they can be a bit garish, I think. If bamboo canes, I think they're just so imposing until the beans grow up them. They can look just a little bit garish. Digwell says, you may see the gallows on my plot shot. We'll look forward to that. Rob says, good evening all, and George, good evening to you, Rob. Nicholas says, Kate, what part of Cornwall? Nicholas says, booed, but it was a flying visit. Digwell says, black currant trimmings for pea sticks. Lovely smell too. This is interesting because I never really thought about using our prunings from a black currants or raspberries as pea sticks and things like that. But I love this idea. Absolutely love this idea. Perhaps this is something we're going to have to do in the future as well. What I love about this is it's recycling. Okay. A lot of this stuff will probably end up in our compost bins. But hey, once they start deteriorating, you can no longer use them for trimmings, for pea sticks, sorry, then there's no harm they can't go in a compost bin after that. So nothing loses out. Nicholas says, in the past, I've used bamboo and string. Lots of bamboo in Cornwall. Had some off a neighbour. Didn't work well. You do need to use a lot of it. Nathan says scaffold poles. That's got to be an amazing sight, isn't it? Scaffold poles. But I can see why you would use that. That would make some really good, strong frames for your beans. Turbo Stream says, bamboo canes for the French beans. I brought some more in home base, closing down sale, but recently brought the plastic covers, metal poles to make a fruit cage. Yeah, it's a shame home base has closed down, but businesses, it's happening to a lot of business at the moment. Anna Jones says, for runners, I use a metal bean pole that I bought from Sutton's 20 years ago. One of the best things I've ever bought for the garden. The cord needs replacing every few years, but it's been brilliant. I'd love to see some photos of that. That sounds interesting. Chili Kate says, we used to have one hazel tree. Now they are cropping up all over the garden. How has that happened? I mean, I guess that my hazel tree does occasionally produce hazel nuts. I guess if that happens, the squirrels could bury the nuts, and that could end up with more hazel trees. So that would make sense. But hazelnuts are another reason to grow hazel trees. I love hazelnuts. It's still something we talk about much in that Grey Road, is it? Growing nuts. What we got? Turbo Stream says, my late allotment friend pot a metal support for raspberries with wires between them. Now, this is actually something I don't often think about, supporting our fruit trees and bushes, but raspberries, summer raspberries particularly, do sometimes need a bit of support. I have to admit, I don't support mine. I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to it, but it makes a lot of sense. We should support them. Sweet coffee coming up. And they should be supported with wire to hold them in place. Stuart says, willow is okay as long as you remove the bark from a bit that goes in the ground, then it shouldn't grow again. Shouldn't, but it's a bit too risky, isn't it? I think there's a layer between the bark and a layer underneath the bark is probably a better way to phrase it, where people will actually take away or scrape away that layer and use that as a rooting hormone for your plants or for taking cuttings. So some good stuff going on with willow. Chili Kate says, so can anyone suggest what is best for outdoor cucumber? Oh, sorry, excuse me, sorry. What is the best for outdoor cucumbers and melons? For me, a good strong stick is what you're going to need. Maybe hazel, maybe bamboo. It's going to need support, especially with melons. Melons can get very heavy, of course, so they're going to need a lot of support. Cucumbers, not so much, but certainly melons. One of the things I've actually wanted to mention to you guys, actually, I am finding at the moment our ground is incredibly hard. You know, I'm on a hard clay soil here, and down on my allotment I've got areas where I'm trying to get canes or hazel sticks in the ground, but the ground is just too hard to push anything through. It's becoming a bit of a challenge with this hard clay soil that we have. Is anyone else finding that at the moment, or have you beaten the hard clay soil and got your sticks in place? Turbo Stream says, most of my old bamboo canes are breaking up, so we'll move over to metal poles eventually. Yeah, whatever works. I'm not against using metal in the slightest. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm yawning. I feel exceptionally tired at the moment, but I'm not against using metal. I think metal looks lovely in a garden. Especially the rustic look. If you go for that rustic look, like I'm going, they work very well. Over on Instagram, McCagnon, McCagan Ian, sorry. Evening, Richard and all. It's Ian. It's Ian. Hello, Ian, and welcome along. Digwell says, my raspberry support is 2 3x3 uprights with 3 tensioned wires in between. Left-hand side of plot 39 plot shot. We'll see those photos a little bit later on. Rob says, for my beans, I built a wood frame out of roof laths. Been up for 7 years. Roof laths. What's roof laths? Let me know. Been up for 7 years. Digwell says, I do like those green metal poles. Last for ages and cheaper than bamboo unless you grow your own. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know the ones you're talking about. They are good. It's going to last. Going to last. Turbo Stream says, my summer raspberries need support, but the autumn ones could manage well. Yeah, that's true. Autumn ones don't need support. Summer ones do. But that's why we cut them down anyway for autumn. Digwell says cambium layer. That's the word I was looking for, the cambium layer, the level just below the bark. Turbostream says the thicker ones should last years. I bought 20 this year. Rebecca says, I grow my cucumbers in the greenhouse up chicken wire. That's an idea, isn't it? Up chicken wire. In fact, I grow my cucumbers up string in my greenhouse. But I'm working on my greenhouse on the allotment, so I might use something like chicken wire. I like that idea, Rebecca. That's got a lot of going for it. But this brings me up to something else I was just sort of thinking of. I've mentioned about the jute netting that I'm using for my peas. It's expensive, very expensive. But in the past, I've had some other types of netting that I've used. Not quite as expensive. Used to come from Wilco's, which is another company that's gone under. God, when you think about all these companies that have gone under from the gardening industry, it makes you realise how lucky we are to still have some available to us. Anyway, this bean and pea netting that I've still got, it is a sort of plastic coated stuff. It's only good for one season, and I'm trying to not use so much plastic in my garden. Especially things that don't last. I don't mind plastic that lasts, but I don't want to use plastic that doesn't last. Rob says, if you can get a piece of wire welded mesh, it's good for cucumbers. I'll tell you something I have got on the allotment that was always intended to be used for my peas, actually. It's a frame from inside a settee. It, like the metal springs, like I guess like the metal springs you get inside a mattress. If you think one of those on a smaller scale for like a settee cushion, I've got one of those on the allotment that I always intended to use to grow up our peas. I've never actually used it. Perhaps I should pull it into use this year. My idea being, because it's like a chicken wire frame, effectively with loads of springs, it was just going to be a good way to grow peas up. I'm going to have to use that this year. Oh. What have we got? Scott says, I've seen people using an old pair of ladders for melons and cucumbers. An old pair of ladders? That's a genius idea. That is a genius. A wooden pair of ladders. I like that a lot. Nicholas says, Richard, use a road pin pole to make holes first, then push in the hazel sticks. It's just so hard to push anything into our soil because we haven't had rain since February. The soil, and it's this clay soil I've got here, is just like cement. Especially the beds that haven't had enough compost added or enough compost added over the years. Hence why we're doing a bit more, you'll see more on the video and stuff. We're doing more straw bale gardening inspired by the lovely Digwell. We're doing more straw bale gardening to try and improve our soil with the compost that it's produced at the end. And organic matter added to soil, because our clay soil, when it dries, it is just so hard. It is like concrete. Digwell says livestock fencing bent into a low arch is good for cucumbers. Talking about melons and cucumbers there. Jenny says, I use a wire mesh or coated wire mesh in a cylinder for climbing plants like sweet potatoes. Also made a plant tower with coated wire. Interesting. Love to see some photos like that. Idaho says, good morning, Richard and chat. Good morning to you, Idaho, although it's good evening here. Hope you are well. Lovely to see you. Chili Cakes says some great ideas. Thank you. I was also wondering about one of those metal obelisk things. That's not a bad idea, those metal obelisk things, actually. Melons can get quite big plants. The biggest problem, though, is actually supporting the melons, because the melons themselves can get really large. I'm growing watermelons this year as well, but because they can get so large and heavy, there is a risk they could fall off. So you've got to be very, very careful with that. What you fix the tiles or slates to? I'm not a roofer, so I'm a little bit unsure what you're talking about there. Stuart Jackson says, hi all, quick question. What does everyone use to get rid of whitefly naturally? Naturally, ideally. Ideally. Thanks, team. For whitefly, I tend to use carnivorous plants, the sundews. Whitefly doesn't tend to move, so you've got to disturb them, but they tend to stick to the sundews. That's what I use. Ian over on Instagram says, I had a client that had a 2-angle iron posts and 2 bar from the length of one post to the other, and then tie bamboo canes into the bar. That sounds great. That sounds great. A lot of angle iron being used, a lot of really good, strong structures that you guys are using for your bean frames. And actually, this is something I think is important. I hate it when you have a really good system, you have something built to size, and then it crumples away. And I like things to last, such as my bean sticks and things like that. I like things that last. Lass says Digwell. I'm not sure. Beddoes is here. Even in all, I support Bury Football Club for when it comes to plant cane stakes. Have to say, I've just ordered a metal frame and netting from China. Let's see if it works. Bury FC. Oh, with you. Roofing lathes are the battens that go across the joints to hold the roof. Right, with you now. Sorry, with you now. Thank you, Nicola, explaining that to me. Took me a minute, I'm sad to say. Scott says, off topic, but how do you tell which way the cucumbers and melons grow to know where to put the support? Generally, they grow up. So if they're going to grow up, I just put a cane or a bit of string in next to the plant and then tie it to that as it grows. So it's just growing up. I think naturally they would tend to sort of scrabble across the ground unless they've got something to grow up. But if they're growing up, just put a cane or string in next to it and tie it in with that. Stuart says you can find Wilco online now. Win-win. They also sell a lot of their stuff in the range, or the range brought a lot of their stuff. Shame, I do miss Wilco's. It was one of the well, before it set in, shall we say, it was one of the best ones. I mean, we've got B&M in the range now, but I don't think they're quite as good as Wilco's. Digwa says jute netting has shot up in price this year. Best thing about it for peas, etc., is you can just throw the whole thing in the compost after harvesting. That's exactly what I will do. Exactly what I will do. And I think it was you that recommended using jute netting for that very reason. And it makes sense to me. And I think that's why I got it. So, yeah, who says that we don't learn anything in this live show? Ian says to get rid of whitefly, you can use washing up liquid as its soft soap, or horticultural soap as well as the other thing I believe you could use. Digwell says soil auger in your drill to make the holes. That's a good idea, Digwell. Talking about my bean canes, actually. I had my soil auger in my toolbox when I left my past company, and I took it to my new company. It's been sat in my toolbox in the factory I brought it back this weekend, so that has just given me an idea of what to do now. Thank you, Digwell. Turbo Stream says, I find talking nicely to your plants give them emotional support they need. Oh yeah, absolutely. Playtex a bra to support melons. Yeah, says Digwell. Yeah, melons can get incredibly heavy, so you've got to make sure they're supported. Otherwise, they fall down and gravity takes hold. Chili Kate says, I hear tights are good to support melons. The ones I'm growing are supposed to be cricket ball size. That's a nice size. I'm told my watermelons aren't going to get too big either, if they get there, that is. Rob says you need to have two fruits you need to have the two fruits close though. Digler says I do use 20 denier tights for hanging fruit though. Interesting. How do you use tights for your fruit? How do you do that? Tell us a bit more. Scott says pumpkin and squash will grow in one direction. I have always grown cucumbers along the ground and found that they do the same. I always grow them up. I think I have let them scrabble across the ground before, but I found that the cucumbers got eaten more than when they were growing up. So I tend to grow my cucumbers upwards now. Nicholas says, old fishing net I've been using for climbers, very weather resistant due to spending so much time in salty water. That's an idea, isn't it? An old fishing net. Because they are, again, made to last. And I can see that being very good for peanuts and things like that. As I said, I like things to last. Scott says, I've used rebar supports before it can be bent into shape as well. I'm really getting into, I spoke about this last week, of sort of styling things and making things once again. It's always been something I enjoy doing. I make sheds and things. I just don't always have the time to do it the right way. And I'm working more in metal at work with work these days, and I'm starting to think about how I can use that to make things in the garden now. So I like this, using rebar to bend things into shape. Digwell says that would look good. Conversation going on. What size bra do you recommend? Says Beddoes. I have no idea. I don't use them myself, and I wouldn't know what size bra is from another. So I'm going to have to bow down and say I don't know. Rebecca says the back row is on form tonight, making me chuckle. Yeah, we always love it when the back row is on form, don't we? We always know who they are as well, because they're always the guilty ones. Chili Kate says, Scott, I usually grow along the ground too, but I wondered if I could save some space. Interesting. I'm just going to higher up my desk slightly because it's a little bit low. There we go. Yeah, I have grown cucumbers across the ground before, but I just find birds and things like that would attack my cucumbers more, and I lost more, so I moved away from that. Jenny says, I grow my tomatoes in those black potato buckets. I grow the melon vines along the bucket handles, threading them through as they grow. It has been a great space saver. Interesting. Nicholas says, yes, Digwell, my mum had some when growing up. What was that? I can't remember now. Valued by Grockles. Valued by Grockles. I have no idea what Grockles are or anything like that. Time for a swig of coffee. Now, I mentioned I've got into making things lately, and that is certainly true, because one of the things that was reminded of me of that is when I was at Gardener's World yesterday. I've spoken about the dipping tank before, which is it's basically a water butt, but it's more like a farmer's trough. Very expensive is the only thing I would say, but they look really good. And I was just chatting to the guy who created them yesterday, as you do, and he said he just wanted something that looked good for his garden, so he made it out of aluminium. And because he made it, a lot more people asked him for one, and that started his business off. And it really did sort of make me think that I can be quite a creative person. I particularly like building things when I have a tidy workshop, which I don't at the moment. And I really want to go take a step back and start making our plant supports and things like that. So once I've tidied my workshop up, I'm going to be grabbing as much of this sort of rebar and stuff that I can to start making more of my own plant supports that look good in the garden. That's got to be the important thing. They've got to look good in the garden. Nicholas says, thumbs up, everyone. Thank you. Good way to grow cucamelons too. To Jenny, I can't remember what she said now. And Stuart says, we may have to introduce a naughty step for the back row, LOL. No, we don't do naughty steps on this place. We want to encourage people to have a laugh. Ian says, for natural hazel bean poles, if you are local to Sussex, the Maker's Barn have some great quality poles. If you want a dipping tank, try Farmer's Troughs. You've got to look at the dipping tank company. They are basically a farmer's trough, but they just they put a bit more thought gone into it, is all I can say. Esilia72 has also joined on Instagram. Welcome along. We're talking about how do you support your plants. Jenny says it would be dig well. I also grew cucamelons up the tomatoes, and that worked well. Cucamelon. I haven't grown two cucamelons for a long time. May have to revisit that one day. Rob says a pig trough makes a good planter. One day I will get one. Digwell says, same as my Lego dibbers. I've still got mine here, my Lego dibber. By the way, meant to say, actually, I should have brought this on. You know, I sowed some Brussels sprouts when we made this dibber on, was it last week? Those Brussels sprouts have came up and they're really easy to separate. So I like these Lego dibbers is what I'm trying to say. Old galvanized water loft tanks, good for dipping tanks as well. Yeah, lots of ideas there. Scott says, I've replaced my fence at the allotment and now have offcuts of the green plastic covered wire fence stuff. I'll be using that for supports. I'm liking the creativity that's going on here. I really am liking the creativity. Idaho says the cucumber or squash vine will grow in a direction opposite of the first true leaf. There we go. Toby Strew says the water supply on our allotment is mainly old baths as dipping tanks. As I said, I'm talking about the dipping tank company, but yeah, I'm with you. Dip baths, troughs, anything like that do good for dipping tanks. Digwell says the trick with cucamelons is to not give them their own space. Always grow them amongst other things. For me, I mean, I remember cucamelons, they came into, or they suddenly appeared and were very fashionable. Everybody was like, we've got to grow cucamelons. And then we grew them and they just never really hit the mark. Yeah, a bit of a cross between cucumbers and melons, but they were tiny and a little bit sort of, what's the point? But hey, if you enjoy growing them, then go for it, of course. Right. Oh, I needed that. I've gone through an entire cup of coffee tonight. Jenny says, I have been... All right, that's not what I clicked on. Rob says, we are advised not to do that on an allotment site in case someone has watched something that has had weed killer in it. Funny enough, on our dipping tanks down on the allotment, we're not allowed to wash anything in the tanks. Where it's only allowed to be for the use of water in our plants. We're not even allowed to wash our vegetables for that very reason, because everybody uses it, and people even water their chickens on the allotment with it. If anything poisonous is in that dipping tank, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So we're only allowed to use it for watering of vegetables. Jenny says, I've been planning my scarecrow for the plot. I need something that is supported, but I can manage to move around easily to be effective. I have a great idea. Watch this space, or do keep us posted. do keep us posted. I tell you what, I think it is time. I've been sent a video from the lovely Digwell Green Fingers. I think this was something we were talking about last week. So I think we're going to go to this video and then we'll come back and continue this conversation.
Okay guys, that's the Aqua Garden Tower setup. There's I think it's 9 Cambridge favourite strawberries in there. Maybe the last time I do it this year, because it needs coarse coir chip, otherwise the drainage holes block, and that's why I've left that one there empty at the bottom so you can see the holes. What came out was this, and it just blocks the holes, it overflows all the time. And the big storage tank at the bottom, which is set on down there, it empties. So yeah, great bit of kit. I've got 2, but this one here, can you zoom out a little bit? Got this one, and I've got the herb one, which I've not set up yet. I'll be doing that soon. Loads and loads of basils. Basil! Yeah, love it. It's on a timer in the shed, and you can set the timer to whatever you want, how many times a day, and for how long a day. So at the moment I've got it set for 2 minutes every 12 hours. So 8 in the morning, 8 at night. There you are then.
Right, does anybody need a toilet now? I'm sorry. Should have warned you there would be water on that. I quite like that piece of kit. That seems very, very intriguing to me. Lots of strawberries growing in that. But is that water going all day long? Is it just so often, Digwell? I quite like the idea of that. Looks interesting. Digwell says cucumelons have a citrus cucumber taste. They taste great pickled, but do use a white distilled vinegar to preserve the taste, not malt. Yeah, for me it was just, I remember hair in my mouth, sorry. They came into, all of a sudden they were, oh wow, look at this amazing vegetable, everyone's going to grow it, and then a year later it had disappeared because it was just a bit of a letdown, I felt. Turbo Strip says our baths are fed by mains water too. Not seen anything like that. Jenny says, Digwell, I need that planter for my jungle patio. And Rob says, so are ours fed by mains water, an old bath under them with a plug hole banked up. Fantastic. Digwell says, I need a wee. He sent me that video. Turbo Stream says, I need a wee. Nicholas says, what about clay pebbles which won't break down? Use moss to hold the water with it. Interesting idea there, Nicola. Digwell says, the pump runs for however long you have set it, 2 minutes twice a day for me. Interesting. Scott says, I liked that. A water feature that provides food, my kind of water feature. Exactly right there. Exactly what I'm thinking as well, which is what I like about it. Do you remember, I think it was last year I made a pond, an edible pond, which I've still got out in the garden. It loses a lot of water, I think, because of the spray, the fountain. But I'm after something a bit more like that as a water feature that doesn't spray water, but it creates like a I can't think, a waterfall, that type of thing. Ginny says, oh, and it's got to be solar powered as well because I don't want to run electricity outside. Jenny says, I should add, I grow food in all of my garden areas. The jungle garden will have lots of food growing in it. Of course. We all grow food, don't we, at the end of the day? I think I've spoken about this before, but I'm leaning more that I'm always about growing food, but I'm leaning more to try and make the kitchen garden, my garden here at home, to look less like a vegetable patch and more like it's a garden that looks pretty but produces food as well. Doesn't help I'm the most untidiest person, but that is the idea. Digwell says, I bought my 2 when they were 50% off. I couldn't afford them now. Fantastic. Jenny says, Richard, get a solar water feature pump. I'll have some. I'll send you the link. Thank you. That'd be great. Yeah. Be intrigued to see what happens there. Digwat says they make a solar version. Hope you are sitting down. £585. £585. I reckon we could 3D print something that does the same with the right pump. I reckon so. Is that all, Digwell? I'll buy two, says Jenny. Nicholas says, I use a floating water fountain, but just have a single spout, not split. Nice sound. Yeah, that's kind of what I got, but it just sprays water too far away, and it runs out in the pond quite quickly. Ian says, if you want to go big style dipping tank, when I worked in a Victorian kitchen garden, we had a big water tank made of concrete that filled from a lean-to greenhouse gutters. I've seen something similar down at Westdean, actually, almost like a concrete pond, but used as a dipping tank for water in the garden. I wonder if I could build something along that. Give me ideas now. Give me ideas. I do want to build an underground water storage under a shed at some point. Whether I do it or not is another thing. Anyway, let's come back to what we should be discussing. What do you use to support your plants? Has anybody done anything weird and wacky for supporting something like, say, peas? I spoke earlier about this sort of mattress metal, the springs inside a mattress that I'm using on, or going to use on the allotment as something a little bit unique, a little bit different. Has anybody done anything like that, or done anything little similar, that just something a little bit different that is a little bit quirky at the same time but would look good? I think I remember this is more for beans as well. Years and years and years ago, there was a lot of people were using old bicycle wheels on the end of a stick to grow beans up. Do you remember that? That was a good idea. That was a very good idea, and it might be something we look at again. Digger says, restrict the input or output of the pump to reduce the pressure and reach of the spray. Yeah, there's not much to it, to be honest. I mean, my theory is then you burn the motor out. That's me being a engineered mind at the same time. But it is one way. It is one way of reducing it. I just think instead of it being a spray, it needs to fall now. Instead of spraying up, I just want it to make like a waterfall and fall down, if that makes sense. Over on Instagram, Michael Carolyn has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Scott says, instead of a dipping tank, I've seen one allotment where they hooked up a toilet to an IBC tank and flushed the toilet to fill a watering can. Flushed the toilet to fill the watering can. What an interesting idea. What an interesting idea. The motor is water cooled, yes, but it can still burn out because it's trying to pump against a restriction or suck against a restriction. So, got to try and avoid that. I'm just trying to get this thing in my head where you pull the chain on the toilet, it goes down a pipe into a watering can. That's clever. That is very, very clever, to say the least. Can it be replicated? Can it be done? I don't know, but it seems, that could be a lot of fun to try and experiment with. Because I guess a toilet cistern holds exactly 10 litres as well. This could be fun. You know what it's like when we get some ideas here on the Veg Grower podcast. We sometimes have to go with it and see what happens. Now, talking of projects and things, I couldn't remember what mission we said, and I was asked a couple of people this week as to what the mission was for last week, and nobody could actually remember it. And then when I checked it this morning, I realised it was to build a seed bed, but I've got nowhere to build a seed bed at the moment. So this week's mission, I'm afraid to say, is a failure for the time being. Now, if you would like me to try again for next week, say, yep, that's your mission, or come up with another mission for next week. Digwell says to Scott, now that is taking the piss, talking about the toilet water can feeler. I like it. I do like genius ideas like that. Scott says, I will try and find a video of it, Richard, and send it to you. It was my brother-in-law's friend's allotment. Please do, because I really do like the idea of that, and I can see why that's a good, clever one to do. Give me ideas sometimes, you guys. You do give me ideas sometimes. So, has anybody got any other ideas of how they support their plants? One of the things I've mentioned a lot, actually, is when I'm talking about this very subject, we tend to talk about it growing up, or to support it as it's growing up. But there are some, and these are the metal ones I brought as well, that actually are more to keep the plants away from paths and off the ground, which is why I've got these almost like horseshoe shaped with stakes going down into you push in the ground. I'm using them on my peonies at the moment just to keep them back off the path so they don't fall down onto the path, which I think is a good idea. I can see that working with some other plants in the future, maybe courgettes or something, or potatoes. Actually could work with potatoes to keep those in check and keep them growing up. There wouldn't be any good for tomatoes because they only go about 30 centimeters off the ground, unless we're talking about our mini bell tomatoes, but they don't generally need staking or anything anyway. Nicholas says, if you just use a cistern of a hung loo and the pipe is held in place against a piece of wood and use a large tub to hold any overrun below. I can't quite picture what you're saying there, Nicholas. Sorry. Yeah, Digwell says, I will take a sickly tomato with me when I visit my therapist. It appreciated the support. Hey, we got to look after our plants. They are babies after all. We got to look after them as if they are our children. Monty makes those supports. He wraps the rebar around a tree, then bends the legs. Cheap to make. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Rebar. I wonder how much rebar is to buy these days, and can I get it? Because I might have to make some. I might have to make some for my tomatoes. I'll be honest with you, what I don't like, and I think many of us are in that same scenario, when it comes to gardening, we want to make things as easy as possible. I'm not talking low maintenance because I don't like the low maintenance gardens. I'm talking we're trying to make things as easy as possible. And when you spend a lot of time tying in tomato plants to a stake or things like that, it can be very time consuming. So I'm always looking, in my eyes, of ways that I can do this a little bit quicker rather than using loads and loads of bit of string. And my thoughts with these bit of rebars is that if we can just put them around the tomatoes as they grow up, they're going to support themselves. Similar to our peas and things like that, they're going to support themselves rather than needing tying in. And perhaps if we get some rebar, we can make our own size ones as well. Nicholas says, what about a door fly chain screen put on a wooden frame that could split the chains opposite direction and then hold the chains in the ground with a tent pegs or cable tied to a frame? That's an idea. Fly chain. That could work, couldn't it? That could work indeed. Jenny says, dried sunflower stalks are very strong and they can make some great supports. Sunflower stalks, that's an idea as well. I mean, that's a kind of the Three Sisters method, isn't it? Where you grow beans up the sunflower stalks, or what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Sweet corn. the Three Sisters method, growing them up those, where you're using those as supports, which is actually very natural, good use of space, and good for everything. Yeah. Stuart Jackson says, I do remember my dad using an old swing frame for his runner beans. It lasted a good few years. He just used string from the top to the ground. What a good idea as well. That's a very good idea. So again, I come back to the fact that I get so annoyed when things don't last and we have to rebuild them and they fall apart. And I'm looking at this and sort of thinking a swing frame, or we could make our own bit of frame up with some wood as well. I've got lots of ideas now. Thank you. Turbo Stream says the seedbed can be just a section of garden set aside to grow seeds. I got the idea to convert an old cold frame into one. It needn't be complicated. It's not about it being. It's not so much about it not being complicated. It's that I don't have a spare bit of the garden to dedicate for sowing seeds because it's all for growing full-on plants. Same as on the allotment. Well, the allotment would be no good because of the couch grass. This is where I'm struggling with that one. Yeah, we'll call that as a mission failed for the time being. If I can do it in the future, I would do it. Cornstalk, says Digwell. Yeah, Three Sisters. Scott says mission challenge: make a support from one of the support material suggestions from tonight. If everyone agrees, because I quite like the idea of a swing or something similar to that, because I think I could do that. Good idea, says Digwell. Nicholas says, use scaffold poles instead of a swing frame. Aluminium would outlast us all. I think Nathan said something about scaffold poles earlier as well. Again, the trouble is getting hold of scaffold poles. Not as easy as it sounds. If you've got some scrap lying around, in fact, I've got some old gas pipe. I could do something out with that. Oh, you're giving me lots of ideas now. Lots and lots of idea. Great idea making a support. I think that's going to be the mission for next week. Make a proper long-lasting support. Will I do it? Will I pass it? We will find out next week. Whoever's taking the notes, that is the suggestion for next week. The mission so far. Make a good long-lasting plant support. It's funny because I said earlier I use my hazels, and I built my hazel frames or my bean frames for out of my hazels, but because I can't get them in the ground, they keep falling over. And now Digwell has said about using the arbor to drill a hole. That makes sense. But now I'm also thinking we might make something a bit more permanent as well. I've got a few ideas. Digwell says, write it down so you don't forget. So I do have a couple of people who write this down usually for me and then message me during this after the show. I don't like writing things down while talking to you because we think I've got ADD because I can only concentrate on one thing at a time and I can't talk while making notes. Facebook Marketplace is a good place for scaffolding poles. Yeah. I'm the note taker as Jenny is leaving earlier, says Scott. Yeah. See, Scott is taking the notes tonight. We got it all worked out. Usually we have a plan. We have things in place. In theory. And Jenny says, I'm a part-timer tonight. Sorry. Thank you, Scott. By the way, I should explain, Jenny is going to have to disappear in a few minutes' time because she's off to collect something from, I think it's from Facebook Marketplace. Didn't actually find out. But she's off to collect a terracotta plant or herb planter, which she shared a photo of in our little chat. And it looks fantastic, I've got to say. I know I've said this before, Facebook Marketplace can be a really great resource for us grow your owners and allotment tiers for just some cheap items. Talking of cheap items, I was in need of some grow bags and some compost for one of my greenhouses on the allotment today. I was down there tidying up and I'm thinking to myself, because because my greenhouses are in an area that has been quite difficult to tackle the weeds with, I'm sort of looking at it, how can I deal with this? What can I do to make this better? So I laid down some black weed suppressor membrane, and I'm thinking to myself, but then I can't grow on that. I thought, I know, I'll get some grow bags and I'll get some compost, because I needed some compost for some other things. And then the price of it put me off on the allotment. And then I realised there is a point to this story. I'm part of the allotment association, so I have use to the allotment shop, which just happens to be open on a Sunday morning. So I pop down there and I could get 50 litres of compost for £5, which I don't think is too bad. And I could also get 4 plant grow bags. I can't remember how many litres they were, for £3.65, which I thought, that's a bloody good price. Okay, I've got to pay £6 a month to be a member, but £6 a year, sorry, to be a member. But hey, £6 ain't too much. I'll post a photo on the Facebook page talking about her herb planter. So I think my point here, I was trying to get that if you are looking to save some money and you have an allotment association, go and find out if they have an allotment shop, because you can actually get some very good bargains. Rob says, if you want scaffold poles, go to a scaffolding company and see what they got. It's an idea. It's definitely an idea. But who here in the audience has a scaffolding company that they know of near them that they can go and have a chat to? Put your hands up if you know where your nearest scaffolding company is, because I don't have a clue where mine is. Stuart says, great price for the compost and grow bags, cheaper than the supermarket. That's what I thought, actually. It depends, of course, how good the compost is. I'm trying to remember the brand. I can't remember the brand. I don't think it's peat-free stuff, but I could be wrong. Rob says, we have an allotment shop, but only open one Sunday a month. Ours is open every Sunday because that's when our gate is unlocked. Jenny says, we have an allotment shop and we can order seeds discounted from King Seeds through them. Excellent. Nicholas says, I did in Sussex. I used to get boards too, talking about the scaffold company. Ian says, my scaffold company is in my village of Liss. So a couple of people got to know them. Scott says, how do you go on about getting an allotment shop set up with them if you don't have one? I don't know. You've got to have a chat with the association. You've got to have a chat with if you have an allotment association. If not, you might have to start an allotment association. You might have to have a chat with your council and see what can be done. And most companies will do deals for an allotment association, for allotment shops. So it's a good question. How do you go on about getting an allotment shop? Perhaps I'm going to have to chat to somebody about that. Google scaffolders near me. They often sell off old damaged poles. Yes, but I was trying to get that without people Googling things. I wanted to see if anybody knew where their nearest scaffolder was. Turbo Stream, the allotment committee have been clearing a couple of plots. There were masses of metal poles that got sent to the scrappy. It looked like a shanty town. What a right mess that plot was. That's same as the couple that are empty near me, and there's loads and loads of empty stuff on it. Nathan says, friend of mine was working in scaffolding trade, always gives me old poles, netting and boards. Scaffold netting, of course, is a good thing to use for if you've got a windy site, to reduce the amount of wind coming through. Also good, I wonder, would it be good for mesh? Would it be good for growing beans and peas up? I think it's too fine a mesh for beans and peas, but it's something. Could be something. No shop on our local allotment, sadly. It's a shame. It's a shame because, I mean, I just figured it was quite a saving going to them rather than having to go all the way to, well, my first thought was Range, which the nearest one is Chichester or Worthing. So that's an hour of my day gone just going there and back. And then this, I had it done in 5-10 minutes, and the greenhouse is good to go. Nicholas says, I have so much bulk compost material, either from felled chipped branches and horse manure. I have many tons in piles. You are lucky. You are very, very lucky to have all that, because I would love that much compost, just not always that possible sometimes. Jenny is off to get her goodies. She may be back before the end. Take care, Jenny. Thank you so much, and please do share a photo of this bit of kit. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm yawning so much today. It's because of why was it? It's because it's been such a. Oh, I just feel so tired at the moment. I've been all over the place. Scott says, I use scaffold netting to protect from cabbage white butterfly. That's definitely an idea. I have hit the thumbs up button on the way out. Yeah, please, everybody, do give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, and don't forget to click the notifications so you know when we go live. Lidl, according to Ian over on Instagram, are selling compost at £3.49 for 40 litre, working out at 8.7 per litre. It's a multi-purpose compost. I bought Lidl stuff in the past, and I wasn't that impressed with it, to be honest with you, but it's a bargain at the end of the day. Idaho, allotment shop sounds amazing. We don't have allotment, so no allotment shop. Most people go to big box Home Depot stores, and others realizing that independent nurseries carry good stuff but cost pounds. You know what, Idaho? I think you need an allotment site in Idaho. I think it'd be a good thing. It'd be of interest to people. Stuart says, I'm going to grow my runner beans next to my 6-foot fence this year just to see how it goes and save space. It's an idea. It's definitely an idea. Nicholas says, the local tree surgeon drops off a free he lives at the bottom of my road a few minutes away, so handy. Yeah, if you can get in with a tree surgeon, you can get lots of wood chip. Wood chip, of course, is good for mulch. It's good for compost. It's just good if you can. I'm all about trying to collect as much compostable material, try and produce as much compost as we possibly can, because I just think we need a lot of it. Not just allotmenteers, any grow your own, any gardener should be making lots of compost, because we need so much of it. Stuart says Tesco's have 80 litres of peat-free for £9.50. Not bad at all. This is one of those we can be going for ages talking about the cheapest compost. Anybody got any better prices on compost than what we've already mentioned? Nicholas says, I'm still using bags I bought in from Homebase 3 years ago, £1 for 80 litres in peat in clearance. I bought 150 bags. Yeah, I remember that. I remembered that. Ian says, Richard, you are tired because of the Big Day Out Gardeners World Spring Show. It's a long drive from your home. He could be right. The thing is, I'm used, up until January, I used to do a drive a lot all the time. It's weird. Slightly off topic here, but it's weird. I was driving down on the motorway down to Bewley, down to the New Forest, and I go to Amanda, because Amanda came with me. I said, I haven't driven this road since January, which is unheard of for me. So I'm definitely doing less driving, but I think it's more I'm waking up earlier in the morning these days, and I'm not going to bed early enough either. I need to sort of go to bed at a better time. Digger says typical compost price is around 10p per litre. And Turbo Stream says you are tired because you are old. It's probably true, actually. It's probably true. It's all the sun as well. I think the sun is what makes us tired sometimes. Scott says 70 litres of Black Magic is £4.50 at my local garden centre at the moment. That's a good price there, Scott. That's a very good price. 10p a litre, not that bad. British garden centres have a multi-purpose compost, reduced peat, £5.50 for 60 litres. That's not bad either. That's not bad at all. You need an afternoon nap. You know, I had that week off, I was having an afternoon nap every day, which is really bad to admit that. And I think I do. I think you're right. I need to start having afternoon naps. I'm fine when I'm at work. Just when I'm not at work, I seem to take naps in the afternoon. I'm definitely getting old, aren't I? I'm definitely getting old. Right, with that, I think it is time to go to another video. This week, it's the recipe video you wanted me to make some dippy eggs with asparagus.
Okay, so for this week's recipe, you wanted me to make some asparagus dippy eggs, and it's quite convenient because we've just started harvesting our first asparagus. So I've got 2 pans on the go here, boiling hot water, well, with a bit of salt added to it. Very simple. 4 eggs going to go in one of these pans. And then, just here, I've got a nice big handful of asparagus. I've cut it down to size, and that is going to go in the other pan. 3-4 minutes. Does need to be a slightly bigger pan looking at it, but never mind. 3-4 minutes and they will be cooked. Okay, they are cooked. They're still quite very warm actually. Hopefully I've cooked the eggs just right. We'll take this asparagus, dip it, oh yeah, nice and runny. Oh, that is lovely, absolutely lovely. Could have done, I know I'm in the dark, could have done with perhaps a bit of chili oil to spice things up as well. That is a good solid, simple 9 out of 10. But I do like my asparagus. And the first asparagus of the season is always the best.
God, that sounds coming out of my mouth sounded awful there, I have to say, while I was eating. But it was good. It was absolutely delicious. I was surprised. I went down the allotment one evening, and I always check on my asparagus as I'm walking around. And I didn't think I was going to get any asparagus this year because it just didn't seem to be doing anything. And then all of a sudden, I had loads and loads of spears that must have appeared overnight. And it's the same. I went down there today. I didn't go there yesterday, but Friday I harvested asparagus. I went down there today, and there was more spears. So we had to pick more asparagus today. I do like asparagus though, and it's one of those things that I look forward to every year. It's a very good for a plant, isn't it? It's a very good plant. Turbo Stream says, I fell asleep listening to a podcast about growing vegetables the other day. I hope that's not the podcast I'm thinking of. If it is. Stuart Jackson says, power naps are very good for you. Try telling my work that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think power naps are the way forward. Digwa says, add a few drops of washing up liquid to the water for the first time you water JM compost, as it Jack's magic, as it tends to cake over. The sufficient helps with the future watering. Interesting. On the note, Ian says, if you're not happy with cheap compost, you can add grit or fertilizer to make it better. That kind of defeats the point, doesn't it, of cheap compost when you have to add stuff to it. It kind of takes away the savings. Digwell says, looks nice. Thank you. Scott says, I found that it cakes over in pots as well. Good tip. Thanks. Talk about Jack's Magic Compost. Yeah. No, that was nice. I mean, I like simple meals sometimes. Asparagus, I mean, that's just 2 ingredients, asparagus and eggs. Just cooked quickly. You cannot get much simpler than that. And sometimes it works, doesn't it? Sometimes I think one of the things we tend to do, and I think this comes from using a lot of supermarket vegetables, is we add a lot of seasoning, a lot of herbs and spices. Whereas I think when we grow our own food, we actually get the flavor of the food that we're eating. Cucumbers, carrots, tomatoes, actually taste of cucumbers, carrots, tomatoes. They actually taste of what they should taste like, and therefore need less seasoning, need less stuff added to it. This is my thoughts anyway. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but I certainly find that it's much better. It tastes much better. Digwell says, I use a little stuff, good for established plants and bed filling. I've got a bed that needs filling. I've got a bed that needs filling, actually. I've got a few beds that need filling, thinking about it. Toby Stream says, I had jacket potatoes and 2 fried eggs for a meal today. So simple and tasty. Absolutely. Absolutely. Idaho says, I like simple meals simply cooked. Me too. Me too. I do. I mean, I like complicated meals as well. I am a foodie. I do like my food. I do like lots of flavour and lots of different things. But I do think and I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but we all eat our own produce. We all eat our homegrown food. And it tastes so much better that it doesn't need as much lifting. Scott says, need cooking challenge ideas for next week. Yes, we do need a recipe for next week. Do need a cooking challenge for next week. Ian on Instagram says, we used to use split compost bags in the garden centre to pot bare root roses and add fertiliser. There we go. There we go. So, again, saves wasting split compost bags, doesn't it? Put it to use. And Ian also says, you used to get Clempack fertilizer to make your own. There we go. Nicholas says, I've managed to get bin bags of vermiculite 20 free from Facebook Marketplace to add to compost for aeration and water retention, always on look. So somebody was telling me yesterday that vermiculite has a tendency to turn into, I think he said, aluminium oxide after so many years or so much. I think it was like 9 months, he said, actually. I don't know how true that is. And is it worrying? I don't know. What's anybody's thoughts on that? Fillet steak and chips, says Bob. I do love steak and chips. Digwell says, I can think of one veg that I defy anyone to tell the difference between shop bought and homegrown. What veg is that? What veg is that? Probably, I'm guessing you're going to say celery. Turbo Stream says, I hate cooking, so it needs to be simple or I won't bother. With you on that. With you on that. Stuart says, homegrown sweet corn tastes so much better than supermarket. That's because, sweet corn, the sugars turn to starch within about an hour of being harvested. So when you harvest your sweet corn, what I always do is rush home. Sweet corn is the last thing to harvest. I rush home and we get it in a pan of boiling hot water as soon as it gets home. That way, the sugars stay as sugar. They don't turn to starch. And that is why homegrown sweet corn will taste so much better than anything in the supermarket, because it is just sugar, no starch in it. Idaho says, I like when somebody else cooks something complicated, but I guess I've gotten lazy, so it has to be simple. Make less mess to clean up. When I used to live alone, I used to use my slow cooker a lot and just let it cook throughout the day, because that was a nice, easy way to cook. And it's one pan, so even less cleaning up. Digwell says, how about an onion flour for the next cooking challenge? AKA a blooming onion. That's a good idea, actually. I've always wanted to do onion flour, actually. If everybody agrees, we will do this onion flour. Garlic, says Digwell. I would say I can tell the difference. I can tell the difference. Not so much in the flavor. Well, there is differences in flavor because I think the supermarket is less strong. But also the size of the cloves, I think, makes a big difference. But I have quite an acute taste buds. Idaho says probably true, but store-bought is so expensive. It's not here. You can get 3 bulbs for £1, I think, nowadays. Store-bought. So opposite, but I guess it's different where you are. Turbo Stream says also most recipes are for 4, so that's off put in 2. Yeah. Again, I know what that was like when I lived alone. What I used to do is like I would cook something. I would like cook a roast chicken on a Sunday for just me, and then I would use the rest of the leftovers throughout the week. That's how I got around it. Digwell says opposite here. It's so cheap. Talking about garlic. Hargrave, what garden centre is that? I love Jack's Magic. We'll have to stock up to Scott. Onion flower sounds good. And Scott says same with peas. The farmed peas you buy in supermarkets are cooked and frozen within 2 hours. Yeah, for that same reason. Again, the sugars turn to starch. And that's why often people eat peas before they even get them in the doors, because they do eat it. Do eat it so because it tastes so good. Ian says council green waste compost has aluminium and arsenic and also all sorts in it. As a guy came to my nursery to see if a trade would buy it, I don't think they would see where the stuff was in it. Now, council green waste is something I tend to avoid to use these days. Digwa says, don't believe you eat raw garlic. I do. I have been known to eat raw garlic. Health benefits are one of the reasons, but also because I used to show off and try and eat the hotter foods. So everybody goes for chili, but garlic can be quite hot as well. And that I used to show off with people because they never believed it was hot. Give it to them and they were like, oh! Always made me laugh. So Stream, I will keep suggesting egg on toast till you make it. That's going to be a winter one. From picking, that is. Talking about peas there. Yeah, egg on toast will be a winter one, I think. Freeze them. Got to freeze them. Peas, got to freeze them as quick as you possibly can. LD Lidl can be 15p on special for garlic. There you go. That is cheap garlic. Absolutely. It is cheap here, but I think it's because we get probably better conditions because we can sow our garlic October, November, December. It gets that period of where the ground doesn't freeze, but it gets that period of chill that garlic needs to split into bulbs, which I think in Idaho it's probably frozen and then it's above that 10 degrees. That's why we don't grow beans, says Rob. Even peas. I have a video of making eggs in a basket. Lovely eggs in a basket, indeed. Idaho says, I love peas, but I'm lazy, so I only grow sugar snap peas. They don't need shelling, and I can buy frozen peas pretty cheap. Absolutely. Ian says, has anyone grown calamondine? It's a small orange. I got mine from Lidl. I've grown them, but they don't. Excuse me. I tend to struggle to get my calamondine through the winter. I've got one outside, actually. I think it needs a bit of potting up, thinking about it. What I recommend, Ian, in Pulborough, there is a citrus plant nursery. They are only open at certain times, but it's well worth popping along and having a word with them if you are struggling, because it's not far from you at all. Also on Instagram, Lottie Marie's Kitchen Garden has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Real aioli is raw garlic and oil, not garlic and mayo you tend to get. Absolutely, aioli. Digwa says, I've never seen a TV chef says use XYZ garlic or ABC garlic, but they all specify what other veg to use. It's a good point. It is a good point. I think because generally when we buy our garlic from a supermarket, we don't get the chance to choose what variety. It's only because we grow your owners that we tend to get a bit more choice in it. But there is a lot of choice in the amount of garlic. I've got 6-7 different varieties that I grow, and I'm growing some from supermarket garlic as well. So 8 varieties of garlic that I'm growing this year. 8 varieties. Stuart says, am I the only person that finds it very hard to get peas into the house? I eat mine on the way up the garden. No, everybody has that trouble. That's why I've sown a lot of peas this year because I want to grow lots and lots of peas so they can actually get in the house. Turbo Strip says, okay, instead of egg on toast, just for a change, could you do sardines on toast? I could do one day. Yeah, gotta suggest it in time when it comes to that. Turbo Strip says, I don't eat many peas mostly, so it's easier to buy a bag of frozen. The thing with peas, I'm sure you guys are going to agree with this. When it comes to peas, you have to grow a lot of them to get a big bag's worth. It is very difficult to get a decent amount of peas when you grow your own without a lot of effort gone into it. Ian on Instagram, my plant is doing okay in the conservatory. I have 15 oranges on it now and some flowers too. Fantastic, fantastic. Right, let's have a look. And I have just realised I haven't set this up properly. Let's have a look at your photos quickly. Now, Stuart's gooseberries, he's spoken about this. They are under protection from the birds. They're looking great, I've got to say. And that soil also looks great. Is this in your house or is it at school, Stuart? But they look fantastic. Steve, who we had on the podcast, I haven't seen him in the group tonight, Stephen. He was on the podcast on Monday and he mentioned, I think I left it in there, about using his radish as markers against his carrots and parsnips. Well, he harvested his radishes and look at those. They look good compared to that rhubarb as well. They look very, very good. Now, Jenny had some breaking news. It was raining where she was. Lucky her. We still have not got any rain here, but we need it. We desperately, desperately need some rain. Digwell's monthly plot shot. We mentioned this earlier, actually. He did say there were some things to look out for. There's the bean gallows. You can see there's lots of structures in this photo where various things are being grown. I've got to say again, it looks a very nice, neat, tidy plot, both of them. And the straw bales are also looking absolutely fantastic as well. Stuart's greenhouse, I've allowed this one in this week because we didn't have many photos. Stuart's greenhouse is rather full. I think everybody's greenhouse at the moment is rather full. Who has got any plants planted out just yet? Or are you like me just holding off for another few days? Let me know. Please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can send to me via social media. Excuse me, or email me, richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk. So there you go. That's your photos. We do love seeing your photos every week. And I know you guys love seeing them as well. Just seeing how it turned up on Instagram. Rob says, again, that's why I don't grow them, talking about peas, because you do need to grow a lot of them for it to get a decent, or to be sufficient in peas. My daughter used to eat peas, to eat all my sugar snap peas in the garden. I very rarely got a look in when they first started producing. Absolutely. Again, they are so tasty. Again, yeah, this is why we're going all out on peas. There's still plenty of time to sow lots of peas if you are in that predicament, or if you're not, or sugar snaps and things like that as well. Plenty of time. The fruit is in my own garden on the mesh. It is hard to keep the cat off the good soil. There you go. Those gooseberries are in his own garden, but it's hard to keep the cat off the good soil. Turbo Stream is on plot 39, just like Digwell. Digwell says frozen peas tend to taste better as they are frozen instantly after picking. Just like corn, the longer they leave it, the more starchy they get. We don't tend to cook ours right away after picking. I tend to blanch mine, like my sweet corn, blanch it as soon as I can, and then put it in the freezer. I've not planted any veggies out yet. Twins, like 2 peas in a pod, says Turbo Stream, of course. And the thing is with peas, even just growing them to eat the plant at the allotment, it's well worth it. Absolutely, absolutely. Excuse me. I need to resow a few varieties of peas this year. quick a few not fired. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm growing. I've got to sow lots of peas because I want lots of peas. I want to be self-sufficient in peas at least once in my lifetime, and I think it can be done. You just got to grow lots and lots of them, pick them regularly, and blanch them as soon as you get. What I tend to do is use the kettle, boil the kettle, and then pour that water over the peas once I've picked them, and that blanches them because it only needs a quick in and out of hot water. Planted the sweet corn out yesterday, says Nathan. Yeah, excellent stuff. Right, in the last 5 minutes, it should be time for a Richard's rants, and I haven't recorded this video in advance because I didn't have anything to rant about. So I'm going to come off, and I'm going to be a bit of an arsehole with this one because I've only just thought of this, so I haven't quite thrashed out my ideas on how this rant works. But I went to Garner's World Live Spring Fair yesterday. Sorry, I'll be going to Garner's World Live and other shows throughout the country. I do like my shows. I do like going to gardening shows. Now, I know they're not for everybody. I know they are quite expensive, and I understand for some people that is quite frustrating. What annoys me is the hidden costs at these shows. Now, I don't mind paying to get into the shows, as long as I feel I've got value for my money. What I object to, and this is happening at Gardener's World Live, you go in there, you got to buy your ticket to get into the show. You've then got to pay for parking, which is usually an extortionate amount. And unless you're catching public transport, you've got to have parking. You can't get there without parking unless you go by public transport. And then often the price of the food inside is very, very expensive. Now, when it comes to food, I don't mind food being expensive as long as it's of good quality. What I object to is paying a lot of money for poor quality food at these events. And usually at these places, it is very poor quality. And that is my rant. The hidden costs at shows, I think, can be extortionate. Parking and food, which I think parking should be incorporated into the price of a ticket anyway. And I think food, if you're going to charge a lot, you've got to supply good quality food to be worth the price. So that's my rant for the week. It was a bit of a struggle because I've literally just made that up on the go. But in 2 minutes left for this show, what do you think of that? What do you think on that? Digwell says, planted my chilies outdoors this week. I'm probably going to do the same, actually. I think it's going to be a good time to get them out. Turbo Stream says, I can't grow sweet corn on my allotment as the badgers take it before they get a chance to ripen. They ruin it. Yeah, you've got to stop the badgers from getting to it. That was always a problem. Beto says, grandkids are asking when the peas will be ready. Who knows? Who knows? They'll be ready when they're ready, tell them. Rob says, and the program is extra. Yeah, paying for a program sometimes. I don't know if anybody's going to any shows. I'm going to Gardeners World Live next month. Spring Fair yesterday, which I did like. There's Amateur Gardening Show in July as well, just north of Brighton. I'm going to that one too. Trying to think of any others. Audley End House. Malvern's next weekend. I'm sure some of you are going to Malvern. But yeah. Idaho, I wonder what they charge the vendors to set up a table/booth. That is a question. That is a very good question. And that's why I object to ticket prices being so high and things like that when they're charging the vendors as well. Digwell says, I will probably not enter my big local show apart from the big country event as an exhibitor this year. They have stopped giving cash prices and they charge £12 to get in. Ridiculous, isn't it? And the booking fee on top, that always annoys me. A booking fee on top. That is just wrong. Just wrong. Digwell including exhibitors and removed the pensioners discount. Yeah. Agree on the food quality. At the very least, it should be a seasonal considering it's a gardening event. Yeah, totally. It should be seasonal and it should be of a high quality food. I think it was like 15 quid for some fish and chips that made me feel ill at some of these events. Birmingham, that was. Just greasy fish and chips. Doubt I will go to any garden shows this year, Turbo Stream. Idaho says probably require the food vendor to have some sort of food selling license. The charges are never ending. I've got no problem with the food vendors making money. They are in it for business. But it's the quality of the food more than anything. I will admit, some of the food vendors yesterday at Spring Fair, they were good. They were good. But some weren't. Malvern on Sunday says, dig well. I'm not going to make it, but I'd love to go. Nicola, the events charge silly amounts for stall holders, sometimes prohibitive. This knocks on to the food prices, but also I think because you're trapped. Yeah, I agree, because you are trapped, but it should also be good quality food, because I can think of some events, I don't want to go and buy food there. I'll probably go to McDonald's because you know what you're getting with McDonald's. Hope you enjoy it, Marvin. I'll just bring a water bottle and a PBJ. Peanut butter jelly sandwich, is that PBJ? Great. Thank you for another chat. See you next week. Oh, it's going into overtime. Stuart says, totally agree with you on that one. Reasons I like Malvern, free parking, and for food, they have lots of choices. But £3 for a cup of tea. My metal work friend was charged £3.50, 350 for the weekend. Absolutely. My last trip to Malvern was 30 quid. Not worth it to me. Absolutely. Then Digwell says, to be honest, mate, I'm only going to see the other YouTubers for a chit chat. No interest in the spring show, really. All flowery. Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to amateur gardening show. It should be a bit different. Stuart Jackson, my friend is not going this year after 20 years, talking about Malvern. That seems exorbitant. And if it doesn't make him any sales, this is it. That's why I don't go to the spring one. Have a great week, everyone. Night all. Topic for next week, did we have one? We're going to talk about mulches next week. That's what I want to talk about next week, if that's okay with everyone. Did we have a mission and did we have a recipe? I think we did, but mulching is what I want to talk about next week. Right, it is time to get out of here and get on home. I know I've gone into overtime with that rant. We seem to go on one there, didn't we? Right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again next Sunday at 6. Podcast out tomorrow as always. So until then, please take care.